If you want to grab a popsicle or popcorn and take your seats, we'll get things kicked off. I mean, this conference just keeps on getting better and better. I can't tell you the last time I went to an event that offered popsicles. Just another minute or so, and we'll get started. So for the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about key issues in animal agriculture today, specifically changes in the antibiotic use conversation following the implementation of VFD. So we have Leah Beyer. She manages the global digital communications team for Elanco Animal Health. The teams are responsible for the corporate media strategy as well as leading the listening, learning, and also shaping in the social media listening center. Her team works to help livestock farmers, veterinarians, and pet owners have the access to innovation tools to give all animals healthy lives through online communications as well as education. To talk about the sustainability conversation, we have Dan Thompson. Mr. Dan Thompson is a third-generation bovine veterinarian from Clearfield, Iowa. He is the Jones Professor of Production Medicine. How long is your title, Dr. Thompson? Yeah, it is that long. He's at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. He's recognized internationally as a leader in animal welfare, beef cattle production, and cattle health management as well. And then to discuss animal ag and on public health, we have Steve Solomon. Mr. Steve Solomon is a principal and founder of Global Public Health Consulting. He is board certified in internal medicine, infectious diseases, and preventative medicine. Prior to retiring from government, Dr. Solomon held several senior executive positions at CDC, most recently as director of CDC's Office of Antimicrobial Resistance. So with that, I'll open it up. I think, Leah, you're going to kick things off today.
Okay, they said there was a clicker up here. Yeah, got it. Okay. She already introduced me. I'm Leah. You can find me on Twitter because I'm going to harass the two people that I'm with. They don't have Twitter handles, and this is a live event. So if you want to tweet, I'm Farm Mom Pundit, which is confusing because some of you probably know me as Buyer Beware. I don't care which handle you use. All right. So when I got asked to fill in for Colleen, because my colleague Colleen Pardecker, so sorry to disappoint anyone who is really excited to see Colleen today. She's actually in D.C. with our president, who is speaking at the President's Advisory Council on Antibiotics. So the irony is she was supposed to talk about antibiotics here. She's talking in D.C. about antibiotics today. So because I have all the social media listening tools at my disposal, I went in and looked, how much conversation have we had on the VFD since it was announced? So I went into January because that's when it took effect. And I'll be honest, in December, there wasn't much conversation. So in January, we actually had an increase in the antibiotic conversation online from 160,000 mentions to 224. It was driven by two things. The VFD, which got a lot of coverage and got coverage in mainstream, and then this poor Nevada woman who died from a superbug. And here's, I don't know if it's good or bad news, but here's the reality. Forward. The Nevada woman won. The spike is the Nevada woman. The lower spike is the VFD conversation. So it had significant conversation. I can just tell you when you look at February, March, April, the VFD conversation has pretty much not died, but become so insignificant that we don't even really talk about it much. So I could mic drop, walk off the stage. But I know I have a few more minutes and I really like to talk. So one thing we do at Elanco, because we are listening to these conversations, is we like to put into context the antibiotics conversation. So I'm going to fly through a lot of super data-driven slides. If you want more information, you email me, you tweet me, you talk to me, I'll get them to you, but I'm going to fly through this. So here are the key takeaways. The conversation is growing globally, all languages, but for the first time, the English language antibiotic conversation decreased by 2% in 2016. The dialogue related to the antibiotics use in farm animals only increased at a volume of 7%, as opposed to 24% the year before. Food companies are driving the conversation. I don't know if Purdue's in the room, but their PR people are driving the conversation. Consumer education is going to continue to be key. Studies, science, research actually has a place in this conversation. It's being shown, it's being utilized, just not at a strong voice. So my proud moment today, because I see this slide a lot, because I've hammered this a lot in a lot of presentations I do, we had a statistically significant growth in our presence in the conversation. We went from 0.02% to 0.2%. Good job. So let's talk about the evolution of how this antibiotic conversation has changed. So when we looked at 2014, 2015, 2016, we've really seen a shift from government policies, World Health Organization, to food companies driving those conversations. The spikes tend to be higher and sharper, and then they plummet. I'm going to walk you through 4 conversation overviews from the largest impact to the smallest. I want you to try to remember some of these numbers. So antibiotic conversation, like I said, is shifting from government to food. 45,000 mentions about antibiotics have the hashtag Purdue crew along with it. And a lot of times it has hashtag promotion or hashtag ad with it too. If you're a blogger like I am, that means you were paid to put that tweet out. Next highest hashtag was AMR. Okay, that's fine. But what that means to us in communications is that consumers are no longer talking about it, and it's more science-based. We look at the sentiment analysis. So it's mixed. General sentiment is pretty much neutral. News articles regarding antibiotics and antibiotic resistance shifts it to the negativity. News, whether it's online or print, they need to get the views, so they've got to put the negative spin to it. Antibiotic resistance is where it's at. That's the heavy, heavy hitter. The fourth one, World Health Organization, the FAO, they carried the conversation this year with the largest spike in the antibiotic conversation back on October 1st. Fast food and brands, you're going to get sick of me saying Purdue, and I don't mean Purdue in Indiana. A key takeaway is that the big brands are driving this antibiotic conversation. The main focus of antibiotics and food chain conversation was additional backlash from already announced antibiotic-free. We learned that when McDonald's announced that they were ahead of schedule in their antibiotic-free movement, they actually got negative backlash because they weren't doing enough. So we've gone to a lot of our customers and told them to be quiet if they're ahead of schedule because they're just going to end up having more negative pushback. Research. Scientists in the room, we need more from you. The scientists at Elanco are probably sick of me asking for more from them. They continue to offer opportunity. We've seen growth consistently, more and more science being pushed out there from 2014 to 15 to 16. Okay, here's the slide you all should pay attention to. Do you see the spike? Do you see the number associated with the spike? That's 800, if you can't. And that was the pork industry. That was their spike, so thank you to National Pork Board or NPPC. I don't know who drove it, but we have more work to do. Who are our leading ag voices? The veterinarians in the room. I don't know if there's any out there. There's not a single veterinarian who's leading the fight, leading the charge, leading the conversation when it comes to antibiotics. When we look at the animal group breakdown of the conversation, poultry owns it. I don't know if you saw recently, KFC went and announced that they're going to be not using any medically important antibiotics. So now we're just waiting for the activists to move on to dairy, beef, or swine. My guess is swine is next. Okay, top Facebook authors by mentions. Sanderson Farms, I know you guys talked about them earlier, but they're leading the charge for us. But the interesting thing is when you go to engagements, Dr. Mercola continues to own the show. I heard some ughs. I get it. So top Twitter authors. I want you guys to pay attention to these numbers too. I did this for I did a GMO example. Look how many times these people are tweeting about antibiotics. The top guy has tweeted over 500 times about antibiotics in a year. The vegans are tweeting about antibiotics almost 500 times. The top engagements, again, are coming from those organizations that have World Health or brands, but USPRIG, who is the one that does the report card saying how good a fast food restaurant is, continues to get high engagement. So I want to add a little context here. Species-related conversations continue to dominate the antibiotic conversations. What does that mean? No one's really talking about antibiotics. When you look at how are they talking about dairy especially, and then poultry. So the forecast. I think all food companies are going to take cues from #Purdue Crew. If you have any type of market research going on, you're going to see that Purdue Crew is owning that conversation. I don't know what the sales look like for Purdue compared to the other poultry guys, but I'm guessing people are paying attention. News outlets will continue to drive that conversation in agriculture, and consumer engagement will remain minimal in the social conversation. So in summary, what I want you to take away, the antibiotic conversation in English, not globally in all languages, is actually decreasing. The main driver of the antibiotic conversations in 2016 was paid for. Consumer engagement in antibiotics, pretty small. And then to educate consumers confused by fear marketing tactics, share messages related to animal welfare and sustainability, because that's what they tend to care about more. Segue to my sustainability partner.
All right, well, when they showed us the time limit on this, being a professor at the university, we speak in 50-minute chunks in our classes, and so we're going to try to do this. But I have no slides. I actually wrote this thing out. And when we think about sustainability, I started to reflect on my career and my involvement in agriculture. And when I started to think about my life in agriculture, I've been very blessed. But when you go back to the 80s and you think about the farm crisis, you think about the consolidation of the swine industry. We went from so many small herds to 10 large herds or 15 large herds. When I was an undergraduate, it was about genetics, genetic improvement. When I was in graduate school, it was about steroid implants and how we were going to improve growth and metabolic modifiers. And then when I got out and I became a veterinarian at Cactus Feeders, I started going through things such as, in the 90s, such as the food safety, the Jack in the Box, HACCP was born, correct? And not until we had the big recall from ConAgra in 2001, 2002 on ground beef did we really start to see the pushback into pre-harvest food safety. Once we started to see that, we then had health outbreaks. In 2003, we had mad cow disease, BSE. We've had the strain of potential of foot and mouth disease because of terrorism in agriculture. We've talked about avian influenza. We've had PED in the swine industry, many different disease outbreaks. In the 2000s, we also had the animal rights activists really start to flame up. And so we talked about things such as housing. We talked about factory farms, the animal welfare era. And constantly, we're talking about how we're going to keep rural America vibrant. How do we get help? How do we keep Main Street open? How do we keep our schools open? All of these things then get slid under one tent, sustainability, right? Sustainability is all of the above. Everything that was engaged throughout the years, or at least through my time in agriculture, something had to be balanced with what was going on in the current topic at hand. Today's antibiotics, tomorrow will be something else. GMOs are something that we discuss frequently. But this constant monitoring of all variables is what sustainability is. Sustainability is not something that is just cut or split in time. It is a continuum. It is something that is balanced forever. The one thing is how do you look at it? Is it the sustainability of humankind? Is it the sustainability of the people of a nation? Is it the sustainability of your corporation, or is it the sustainability of your commodity group? It might be something as simple as the sustainability of your household. Many different definitions of sustainability, many different variables that have to be included. But the other thing is what level are you discussing sustainability? And I think that when we look at that, one thing we know is we have to eat, right? We have to have agriculture. We have to have livestock production. So ag sustainability is important or necessary for the sustainability of humankind. Many different outcomes are measured to measure sustainability: profitability, performance, mortality, greenhouse gas, food security. Sustainability models and forecasts are important for agriculture's future, and sustainability regulation and taxes are important for the conservation of agriculture in an area where resources are limiting. Fences and boundaries are really good for governing and for taxing and things to that nature, but I'm sorry, climate change and things to that nature are not going to look and see where the fences are. They're going to shift, and we have to be able to move. Albert Einstein said that life is like riding a bicycle. To keep balance, you have to keep moving. And sustainability is no different. Sustainability is balance. It never sits still. It is extremely complex. Economics, food safety, food security, environmental responsibility, animal health, antibiotic resistance, human health. And so much must be measured constantly and kept in balance. It's not an audit. Sustainability is not a pass or fail of an individual operation. It should be the constant tracking of skating. As Wayne Gretzky said, skate to where the puck is going to wind up, right? Don't chase the puck. And that's what we have to do with marketing, with sustainability. This is a quote from the National Academies of Science, and Mario Herrera is one of my heroes when it comes to sustainability. Recent global assessments have considered particular elements of livestock and livestock systems, but none addresses such systems, and their considerable variations is comprehensive in an integrated way. This has led to inaccurate simplifications of messages surrounding how to manage the livestock sector's growth in the future. The lack of a systems perspective has also curtailed explorations of more sustainable options for the sector's development. This needs to be rectified. Global change will have highly differentiated impacts on food, livelihoods, and ecosystem goods and services from the livestock systems around the world. What that's saying is, we in the livestock industry must practice brutal honesty when it comes to sustainability. This is not something that we're going to just go in and study to prove that we're doing everything okay and everybody ought to get off our back. This is about the sustainability and livelihood of maintaining what we do 100 years from now. And we aren't going to get better if we quit learning. The other thing that's in here, the more I read about sustainability, globalization, and climate change, I will tell you this: I am more certain than ever that environmental change will have more of an impact on livestock production than livestock production will ever have on environmental change. Period. And we have to remember that. The balances are important, but the other thing that's important that my colleague led me to is the marketing of sustainability indicators. And it drives me crazy. Anthony Robbins was the big self-help guru in the 80s, right? And he said the two things that drive people are fear and pleasure. Well, we have seen pharmaceutical companies ad nauseum market disease on television, correct? And they are marketing one of two things, fear or pleasure. And you can take that as you want. Now, activists today are masquerading as the consumer, and they are having the fear factor, or trying to get food groups or brands, food brands, to market the fear agendas to sell our beef, dairy, pork, and poultry products. Fear is an interesting emotion which affects the thought process and reaction of individuals. It can be extremely powerful. It's not the safest tactic, but if used correctly, can have huge impact. Restaurants do not feed the poor. Restaurants feed the rich. Restaurants feed the people who can afford to have someone else plan the meal, cook the meal, and do the dishes. We have only spent 4% of our personal income since 1929. It has not gone up or go down on restaurants, on food outside the home, for almost 100 years. So it's a captive supply for those restaurants that they're all fighting over. When you hear, well, we've gone antibiotic-free, you don't say, well, I'm going to go out to eat more now. No, what you say is, hey, honey, let's go out to eat. And what's the next question? Where do you want to go? We're going to spend 4% of our personal income. So they're all fighting over people who have money. And the people who have money are making the decisions and putting money. The rich can afford to err to the side of safety. Poor people in this country just want to eat. When I start to think about retailers, and these types of decisions, please, retailers, have patience. This is about sustainability of mankind and providing food for people in an affordable manner. Poverty in this country is determined by the price of food. It has been since 1963. If you increase the price of food without increasing the income of people in a country, you increase the poverty rate. I don't think restaurants understand that they could be inadvertently increasing the rate of poverty in the United States, which diminishes your tax dollar, because it increases the number of people reliable on food stamps. But restaurants don't care about food stamps because they don't take them. Grocers do. So it is an important source of this. Today, the average per capita income in the United States is roughly $24,000 a year. Poverty for a household of 4 is established at $24,000 per household, and 25% of the households in the United States live underneath that mark. This is not about, we have forgotten about how little money people live, and the decisions that are being made today are being made by people who can afford it. Based on the USDA ERS food security in this country, whether it's urban, rural, or suburban, is around 15%. The rate of food insecurity is twice as high in Latino and African American populations than it is in Caucasians. And the highest rate of food insecurity in homes where a single mom is raising children, and that's at 36%. We need to be aware of this. Don't show up on a Saturday to box a meal or to give meals for how many dollars are spent in your store, and then turn around and remove a technology that increases the price of food without proper due diligence. Bill Gates says if we can spend the early decades of the 21st century finding approaches that meet the needs of the poor in ways that generate profits and recognition for corporations and businesses, we'll find a sustainable way to reduce poverty in the world. In conclusion, you notice I'm trying to stay on time here. I do just a little bit of lay ministry, and nobody likes a long sermon, funeral. I haven't done any funerals, but anyway, don't want to. But anyway, appropriate, honest sustainability studies are necessary for agriculture and livestock producers. Okay? Maybe there are changes a person can make or implement and improve what they're doing on their farm. Maybe there's something that they change what they raise to stay in business. Global sustainability, humankind sustainability, national sustainability, local sustainability, we have to feed people at the end of the day. Wealth equals food, poverty equals starvation. It's really hard for starving people to worry about the sustainability of something 100 years from now. They want to eat tomorrow. But people who have money want to keep that money for 100 years. So when we start, they want to sustain this lifestyle. So we have to understand that there's going to be different agendas. Our globe's climate is going to change. Water availability is going to change. We'll be able to grow crops in different areas of the world, maybe in another world. New disease outbreaks will occur in people and in animals. Population centers of people are going to change. Therefore, where and how food is produced is going to change over time, and so will the sustainability of agricultural products. In developing countries, sustainability studies are used to determine how, what, and when, and where the best places are to raise livestock and how to do it. In developed countries, sustainability efforts are entwined with so many political agendas because we have an overabundance of food and we can afford to do it. Local, national, and global distribution of food is our downfall today, in my opinion. We're great at raising it. We just have problems getting it to the people who need it. And so I know one thing, globalization is here to stay. So when we talk about it, our developing nations in the world need our help. They need modeling, and we need to develop systems so those countries will be able to provide food. The proper use of sustainability will tell us how to model so that we can feed the world. It is imperative at this time that we have humane leadership to make sure that we do not undo all the good that has been done before us, and look to the future in feeding the planet.
Okay, well, you are a very hardy group. Thank you so much for staying with us all the way through to the end of the day. We'll try and get to the questions and answers, and then I know there's a great reception coming up just a little bit later. So I get to build on all the things you've heard today, and so there's certainly a lot of scare stories and a lot of media attention. You've heard all about that. These are just a few of the scary headlines. I like the one, drug-happy doctors are unwittingly creating overprescription. I see a few people out here who have the same vintage as I am. I went to medical school in the 1970s, and those of you who remember, drug-happy doctors had a different meaning in those days. So antibiotics, people ask, is this really a terrible problem? I mean, is that really something we should be worried about? And the answer is yes. I mean, it's not just a question of antibiotics losing their effectiveness against pneumonia, but antibiotics underpin almost all of the advances in modern medicine. Everything, complex surgery, transplants, cancer chemotherapy, everything is based on the availability of antibiotics. If you lose those, we lose a lot of what we consider routine but very life-saving modern medical care. Now, this is not a new problem. The first warnings about the overuse of antibiotics by doctors in clinics and in hospitals were in the 1950s. This is not a new problem, but we may in fact be approaching a tipping point. You heard Leah and others talk about that one case of the woman who died from the superbug, the totally pan-resistant, resistant to all antibiotics infection. We are, I think, approaching that. Now, it's not going to be at Armageddon in the next 12 months or the 24 months. You can't make predictions. Public health surprises you. But this is one of those things where it's going to creep up on us. And by the time we get to a few dozen or a few hundred people dying of these pan-resistant bacteria, it's going to be too late because this is a real tip of the iceberg phenomenon. And the ones that are killing people are just a tiny sample of what's actually circulating out there in the population. The problem is getting much worse. And the reason is, again, overuse of antibiotics, going back 70 years, but the bacterial resistance spreads very, very easily. It spreads fast. Pharmaceutical companies are not making as many new antibiotics as they used to. The so-called golden age of antibiotics, when there was a new antibiotic coming out seemingly every month in the 1970s into the 1980s, that's gone. Very few new antibiotics are being produced for a lot of complicated reasons, one of which is market failure. It doesn't pay for a pharmaceutical company to invest in new antibiotics. And there are a lot of problems with the way that we prevent spread. We're trying to catch up. We're playing a game of catch-up here, but we're learning a lot of stuff on the fly that we didn't know before. Antibiotics, as I said, travel all over. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria travel all over the world. And it may be that those bacteria are moving around on agricultural products, but what we do know, and what is well documented, is that they move around the world on jet airplanes in the guts and on the skin of people who get on an airplane in one part of the world and they're on the opposite side of the world within a matter of a few hours. That is the way some of these superbugs have clearly been demonstrated to travel around the world. The main barrier to problem solving is that this is the most complex problem in all of medicine and public health. It really is. And people like narratives. People like an easy answer, and they like narratives, and you've heard this all day today. They like narratives where there's a good guy and a bad guy. There's a hero and a villain. Here are the good guys, here are the bad guys. Let's blame the bad guys. All right? Let's blame those drug-happy doctors. Let's take their licenses away. Let's not reimburse them for hospital visits. Let's not give any more Medicare money to hospitals that overprescribe. Stop using antibiotics in agriculture. Everybody's got a simple answer to a problem for which there are no simple answers. Absolutely not. There is no one thing, two things, three things you can do that's going to solve this problem. In fact, in health sciences, and again, you heard a little bit of this from Nina earlier today talking about her book, it's very difficult to get people in the scientific community to change their base perceptions of something, even when you introduce new evidence. That process is going on now, but it's slow and it's painful. And we still lack the information we need to untangle this chain of causation that goes from the bacteria, whether it's in a human being's gut or an animal's gut, wherever it is, all the way through a very complicated process to causing an infection and illness in a human being. That chain of causation and the role that antibiotics play in that is not as well known as everybody wishes it was or some people think it is. This has been going on, I said, for a long time. In fact, it's a 3 billion-year-old problem. When bacteria were the only creatures, the only living things on Earth, evolution and mutation, these bacteria mutated. And one of their mutations was to create these chemicals that they could push out into the environment. Today we call those antibiotics, but it gave them an advantage because it killed off the other bacteria in the soil right around them. Well, mutation being what it wasn't too long after that these other bacteria mutated, and some of those mutant bacteria had resistance to those chemicals, which we now call antibiotics. So the bacteria have been playing that game and fighting that war for billions of years. We come into it very, very late, down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and if that red line was actually to scale, you wouldn't be able to see it because it would be too thin. So what does that mean? Well, you've all heard the number 70 to 80% of antibiotics in the United States by weight are used in animals in agriculture. Well, let me give you some other numbers. 50% of all patients admitted to hospitals receive an antibiotic at some time during their hospital stay. We use a lot of antibiotics in people. And as a matter of fact, on any given day, 2/3 to 3/4 of patients in intensive care units in the United States are receiving an antibiotic. We use a lot of antibiotics, and that drives antibiotic resistance. One more example of facts of data. This is a slide, state by state in the United States, on the number of prescriptions. This is doctors' offices, outpatients. The number of prescriptions written per 1,000 people per year. So in the dark blue states, doctors are writing over 1,000 prescriptions per 1,000 people, more than one per person in the course of a year. In the lightest colored states, those numbers are around 300 to 400 prescriptions, 1/3 to 1/4 as many as in the dark blue states. Now, on the one hand, it's clear that there's no epidemiologic reason why doctors in some states should be writing 3 to 4 times as many prescriptions for their patients as in others. But at times, even I lapse into saying, what's wrong with those doctors? What are they doing wrong? It's very important not to demonize anybody in this conversation. People are doing, in most cases, they're doing the best job they can with the information that they have. And what we in public health need to be doing is giving them better resources, better information, and better techniques to prescribe antibiotics better. And I think that goes across the entire spectrum of how antibiotics are used. And one last thing is that even if antibiotic resistance didn't exist, there are very good reasons for doctors to be more circumspect in prescribing antibiotics, because we're learning just in the last few years this very complex human microbiome, all of the bacteria that live in the human gastrointestinal tract and on the skin. We need those good bacteria to be healthy. You've heard about that. And in fact, one of the major consequences of giving antibiotics to people is killing off those bacteria, and one of the things that happens is this infection called C. diff, which it can be a life-threatening diarrheal infection in people, and you know that there's over 500,000 cases of those a year. So even if you took antibiotic resistance out of the equation, we need to be prescribing antibiotics to people better, because these are powerful pharmaceutical drugs. They have serious side effects. They cause allergic reactions. They interact with other drugs that people are taking. But there's a 60 to 70-year history, a belief system, that antibiotics are all benefit and zero risk, and it just is not true. So moving forward, what do we need to do? We need to slow the development of new resistance, and we need to interrupt the spread of existing resistance. And that really means thinking differently about antibiotics. It doesn't mean stopping the use of antibiotics in veterinary medicine or in human medicine. It doesn't mean arbitrary cutbacks in the amount of antibiotics that are used, but it does mean thinking about the fact that these are powerful drugs, and we need to understand when we're using these drugs, why we're using them, how we're using them, and to constantly be asking ourselves the question, are there better ways to be using these drugs? Can we improve on the way we're using these drugs? It's not a question of good or bad. It's not a question of good or evil. It's a question of, can we do a better job, which is what almost everybody is thinking about trying to do, just to do their jobs in a better way. And for the first time, we actually have the technology that's going to let us do that. And that's through genetic testing. We can now, just like with the human genome, we can break down the entire genetic sequence of every bacteria. We can identify those genes, those mutant genes that give the bacteria the ability to resist those antibiotics. We can track those genes, not just the bacteria, we can track the genes as they travel around the world, between people, to the extent that they travel from animals to people, we can figure that out. We'll then be able to make more educated and more rational decisions, more evidence-based decisions on what to do with antibiotics. So I won't go through the summary. I've told you everything, but the bottom line is two things. Let's not demonize people. Let's not point fingers. We have got to come together. Medical doctors, veterinarians, people in industry, people in the pharmaceutical industry and agriculture, we have got to get together. We've all got to accept our role in this, not point fingers at somebody else. We have to take this, what is truly a One Health perspective, and help each other improve the way we're using antibiotics and stopping the spread of resistant bacteria. Thank you.
Okay, only about 5 minutes for questions. I think Dr. Thompson planned it that way. He spoke longer so that no one would ask him any questions.
I didn't, because I saw the timer.
Oh, he saw the timer. Okay, so any questions? This is a really complex issue, and you talked about this. I mean, that's why it's hard to communicate about it, because it is one of the most complex issues of modern medicine. So do you have any advice on how to effectively communicate about antibiotic resistance? The mic should be on right there. Did you get it? Okay.
One of the things that we found effective.
Hang on one. Okay, go ahead. If Leah wouldn't have mic dropped, it would probably work.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
One of the things that we found effective, thank you. It's good to have somebody much younger than I am who understands technology.
Dan, that's a compliment.
One of the things that we found very effective is to communicate with people where they're at and not make assumptions about what their knowledge base is, and to use numbers the right way. Doctors have always thrown too many numbers at people. They've always tried to reproduce their scientific publications. The key is to find simple numbers, simple concepts, and understand what you're trying to communicate. It's basic. I know to an audience like this, it's basic communications, but I'll tell you, to a scientific group of scientists or a group of public health people, that's a foreign language. If you don't give them all 12 pages of their scientific article, they'll accuse you of being a fool who's just trying to make trouble. So it's a challenge, but simple messages and know what you're trying to communicate.
Anyone want to add to that?
Well, I would just add by saying don't assume they're talking about it. like what we've learned at Elanco is that it's the science community and the activist community that's talking about it. So sometimes we go and talk about something, antibiotics resistance, to an audience that doesn't even know there's an antibiotic resistance problem that's caused by livestock, or being blamed on livestock. So, some people are sitting there just fine. So we don't want to, sometimes I have to hold people back because they literally want to throw gasoline on a smoldering fire that's about to go out, depending on the audience. So talk to the right people would be also what I would say.
Okay, any questions in the audience? Dan, many activist groups are attacking the environmental impact of animal agriculture. We see this daily. So what's the most effective way to counter that messaging that we often hear?
Well, I think that it's the truth is the best way to, we one thing that we have to do constantly in agriculture is just be brutally honest with ourselves and brutally honest with whoever's asking the question. I think it's the simplest way to bring it forward. And if people want to be unethical or immoral, that's their decision, and at that point in time, the truth will be sought out at some time. But whether it's, we've been through it, just pick a topic. When we went through the Jack in the Box, I've been in food safety research, in animal welfare research, and the sustainability research, the antibiotic resistance. The one thing that I would say is that for every complex problem, there's a simple solution, and it's wrong. And so, that's what we have to keep in mind. But just keep the conversation open and just tell the truth.
Okay, to wrap things up then, we've been talking about action today. So what's one action item or, what advice do you have for those of us in the room? What's the takeaway? What's the take-home message? Each of you.
I would say my action for all of you would be participate in the conversation, but know who you're talking to. So, I'm on purpose, I have 2 Twitter handles because there are some people that follow me because I blog about food and drinking that don't really care about antibiotic resistance or government policy. So know your audience and put yourself out there. The reason I really wanted to highlight, we need more scientists in agriculture talking about AMR. And they're just not getting on social media and being part of the conversation. So I would say take a step, pick a platform, know your audience.
I think that when it comes to sustainability and agriculture is understand that it's not, I think it's just like what Steve said about antimicrobial resistance. We are where we're at. And we need to understand or predict or model where we're going. And so don't point fingers, don't condemn, but don't market it. The thing that I have a hard time with is I heard people say when we're going through the animal welfare, I'd hear everybody say, now you beef guys don't go running off without us because we're all in this together on welfare. Okay? Well, then I just hear today that poultry is owning the antibiotic talk. I thought we were all in this together. And so we have to understand that each commodity, even though that we are all in this together, we are competing against each other. And the differences in the way commodity groups come across, and all of a sudden poultry says, well, we're not using antibiotics in broilers. And then you walk into a McDonald's restaurant or a Burger King and there are poultry products and beef products on the menu. There's competition immediately between each other. And so, we don't want to leave each other behind, but understand that there is some good, healthy competition.
I think one thing that's useful from a public health standpoint is that work at the state level. States are much closer to their populations, and now every state's different, but there are some states that already have really good programs linking the medical community, the veterinary community, agriculture commissioner. Minnesota is one that I happen to know about, but I'm sure there are others. And I think working at the state level and even at the county level with the local medical society and the local vet society is probably a stronger move than trying to work with my good friends at the federal government. So I think county and state, go local. That's what we keep saying. And I think having an impact is going to be easier at that level to try and bring people together and have positive conversations.
Let's give this panel a round of applause. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. All right, to wrap things up in this room, we have Kay Johnson-Smith, the Alliance President and CEO. She's going to, with some exciting news, recognizing the 2016 College Aggies online winners.
Okay, everybody, take a deep breath. Whew, what a day, right? Information-packed, and I hope you all learned a lot and engaged a lot. I know I saw a lot of activity on Twitter today, so thank you so much to all of our excellent speakers. Before we wrap up today, we're going to take just a few short minutes at this time to recognize the winners of our 2016 College Aggies Online Scholarship Competition. And while I'm talking, I encourage you to look at the screen and see some of the activities that our college students this year participated in and the impact that they had on their colleges and in their communities. So as you all know, activists are very active on college campuses. So in 2009, we created College Aggies Online as kind of a response to provide a voice for agriculture on those campuses. So College Aggies Online is a nationwide initiative aimed at helping college students and collegiate agriculture clubs, all with a passion for agriculture, to utilize social media and community engagement to help share agriculture's story. The competition is open to all college students with an interest in agriculture, and since we created it in 2009, more than 5,500 students have participated, representing over 175 colleges and universities. We've also been able to award each year over $10,000 in scholarships to these college students, but we could not do it without the support of our sponsors. So I'm going to just read off the list of this year's sponsors to let you know who has been a part of this so far this year. Dairy Management, Inc., National Pork Industry Foundation, National Turkey Federation's 20 by 20 Project, Diamond V, Ohio Poultry Association, Florida Dairy Farmers, AgriBank, Belstra Milling Company, Pennsylvania Beef Council, and the National Chicken Council. As you all have seen, the students running around here, handing out mics, selling raffle tickets, helping us as staff with the Animal Ag Alliance. These are some of the top, these are the top earners of awards this year. And so it's my pleasure to recognize them, and I hope that you all will spend some time getting to know them. So as we get ready to recognize them, I would like to invite some of our key sponsors for this project to come up and help us hand out awards. So if Joel Brandenberger is here from National Turkey Federation, Dallas Hockman from the National Pork Producers Council, and Don Schindler from DMI, if you would like to join us up here on stage, please. Oh, you're here already. Awesome. He knew. And I should say, for those of you who aren't familiar with the program, please go to our website and click on the Connect tab, and there is a tab for College Aggies Online. So please learn more about our program. So we have an individual division, and we also have a collegiate club division. So in the first place for our individual winner, okay, you guys are all lined up behind me, sorry, is Topanga McBride. She is a junior in agricultural communications and ag economics at Kansas State University. So Topanga, come on up. And I should say, for the sake of time, so you all can get to the reception very quickly. I know everybody's thirsty. If you'll hold your applause, and I'll go through the next three winners and we'll recognize everybody at the very end. In second place in the individual competition is Brianna Gwertz, who is also a junior in agricultural communications at The Ohio State University. Our third place winner is Erica Balmer, who is a master's student in youth development and agricultural education at Purdue University. In our student organization division, the club division, the winners in first place from Western Illinois University, it's the Agriculture Club, and they're represented today here by Dylan Seacrest. In second place in the club competition was the agricultural advocacy class at Northwest Missouri State University. And in third place, the Gator Collegiate Cattlewomen at the University of Florida. Unfortunately, we don't have representatives from the last two schools. It is finals week in a lot of universities, and they unfortunately were not able to get away. So if you all will join me in a round of applause for all of the students. Again, I would ask you all to please introduce yourselves to the students. We want this to be a reward for them, and this is one of the rewards for their hard work. In addition to the financial scholarships, we also bring them in because we want this to be a leadership opportunity, a learning opportunity, and networking opportunity for them to meet some of the top leaders within our industry. We'd also encourage you to consider supporting our College Aggies program. It continues to grow each year, and so we need the support to help continue to grow the program. So consider becoming a sponsor, joining our list of sponsors, and then tonight on an individual basis, the raffle tickets that you'll see are College Aggies running around during the reception selling, that is all going to support our College Aggies online program. We do take credit cards as well, so if all you have is $2 or $3 in your wallet and you go, oh, darn it, we take credit cards. So we've got a square, we're ready to ring you up. So lastly, just a couple of announcements before we head off to the reception, which will be back up in the rooftop ballroom where we were for lunch today. In just a few minutes, you will receive another email asking you to complete your survey for the afternoon session of our summit, and we really hope you'll take a few minutes just to complete that. It helps us each year make this program better and better, and hopefully we'll continue to top our program each year as we continue on. And again, lastly, the note about selling raffle tickets. Did I say you could use credit cards? So I think that is it. Tomorrow we will have breakfast starting again at 7 a.m. Similar to today, it will be set up out in the foyer here, and you'll have the room open for breakfast. And then at 8 o'clock sharp, we will start back with our summit for our Protect section of the program. So thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you upstairs in the ballroom.